So, hi. You have to excuse me. I've got a bit of a script down here. I might look down, reconnect with what I want to try and say. So, recently come back from holiday. Noticed the Gran Canaria tan. Greatly recommend it to anybody. If you look at the video I was shot a year ago, I look positively pasty. So, I want to talk about a book called Adonis Complex. Here it is, written by Harrison Pope, Katharine, Phillips, and Ricardo Oliveira, or Olivardia. Double check the year it was published. It was 2005? 2002, first edition. Most of the way through, but I feel that I've read enough to comment on the contents. So, review the Adonis Complex. So, we've spent decades, and quite rightfully so, talking about the crushing beauty standards placed on women. We talk about airbrushing, eating disorders, and the psychological toll of the ideal female frame. There's been a silent epidemic happening on the other side of the gender aisle, and we are dangerously ill-equipped to handle this. Today, I'm going to talk about it. It's called the Adonis Complex. So, this book, the Adonis Complex, defines not a single diagnosis, but a terrifying array of body image insecurities specific to men. We're talking about muscle dysphoria, often called bigorexia. You see on YouTube, Netflix, Prime, several videos and documentaries made about this because it's no longer a new concept to come to mind and deal with in society. A bigorexia basically is where men look in the mirror and they see someone who's small or frail, no matter how much lean muscle they've packed on. So you think that in the modern beauty standards, women feel constantly fat. They look in the mirror, they see chubby looking back at them. Some, unfortunately, develop anorexia nervosa, AN, and it's a downward spiral that requires a bit of intervention if it gets too bad. So the core takeaway of this book, and the thing that hit me the most, was the pressure on men to look a certain way is no different to those that are faced by women. The imagery, the superhero movies, the fitness influences, the ideal male body has become biologically impossible to maintain or achieve without some pharmaceutical chemical assistance. The book quite rightly points out that if you look at Star Wars models, Luke Skywalker, 1977, looked like Luke Skywalker, essentially. Time goes on, and then eventually the re-release comes in the 1990s. I think 1996, 1997, roughly, give or take. Kenner Toys no more. Hasbro released the new characters, and the Luke Skywalker looked jacked. He was massive. He had the chest, he had the arms, he had everything going on. And this is symptomatic of what the problem came. So a few years after this book was written, it got even worse. Proper neck muscles, big traps, and what have you. So there's become an obsession in men in the years. I'm 48 years old. I grew up in the 1980s, 1990s. I have seen the change in the toys, in the cartoon characters. 1980, 4, 5, maybe earlier. My favourite toy was a He-Man. You don't need me to describe what He-Man looks like, really, do you? The same restrictive dieting and obsessive weighing that we see in women as red flags is often rebranded for men as mindset, grind, discipline. But here is a real problem for me, personally. While women are struggling with body image is met with at least some empathy in society, men are met with a shrug, sometimes worse. No, I'm not going to name names, but, when I was younger, I'd have a bit of a low self-esteem, and I'd say to someone, well, what do you think? And they'll turn around and say, I generally think you're fishing for compliments. You're fishing for something. You're fishing for your ego to be inflated. I'm not actually. Back then, and still sometimes now, if you ask my wife, I'm just looking for a bit of reassurance, because sometimes you don't see in the mirror what the world sees when they look at you. That's very, very sad. So where the book gets really, really heavy is the suffering is silence problem, because masculinity is often tied to stoicism and strength, and men often feel they have nowhere to go. Men are caught in this double bind. They are pressurized to achieve the physical ideal, but forbidden to admit that they care about their appearance enough to be hurting. Sometimes men might be called vain. Carly Summer wrote a song about it, didn't she? Yeah. But not necessarily about men with the Adonis Complex. It was about Warren Beatty. So too many guys are suffering with nowhere to turn, and I would speak to you because admitting you feel insecure about your body is often seen as unmanly. We've created a culture where men are allowed to have muscles, but aren't allowed to have feelings about them. So why should you read it? Let's just scroll down my bullet points here. The Adonis Complex isn't just for clinicians. It's for every guy who's ever felt about not being big enough, and every person who cares about the man in their life. There are sort of self-tests in the book that you can go through as a man and critically think about where you sit on the spectrum, and also for the people in their lives that love them. If you've got a man in your life, or you've got a woman or a man in your life that you think, actually, I think you need to have a read of this and tell me what you think and see where I sit on this spectrum. But it pulls back the curtain on the rise of steroid use in gym goers. There is a very comprehensive section where it talks about it, listing the chemicals, the cycles that young boys have gone into. It does away with some myths, and there are a couple of things that I disagree with, because in the intervening 20 odd years, science has moved on, and there has been more proof that long-term effects of some of these steroids are cataclysmic for many, many men. So there's psychological roots of body checking, so where it all comes from. There is a relationship between AN and bigorexia and Adonis Complex, and trying to understand that, and how to start the conversation about the obsession becoming pathological. So if you read the book, you know that there are trigger points. There are trigger points to the people you love, and you can actually have that conversation. So next to my script here is my final thoughts. Is it time that we as a society should stop pretending that body dysmorphia and all these things is a female-only issue? If we want healthy men, we have to give them permission to be vulnerable about the skin that they're in. Pick up the book. You might find it in your library, or you go to Amazon and buy it. It's £15 to £20. I'm sure you could buy it for less on a second-hand bookshop. I don't know if it's still in print, so if it is a second-hand bookshop, it might be a bit more expensive. But have a read. If not, ask ChatGPT or Gemini to give you a synopsis of the key takeaways. So my question for you is, do you think the rise of social media has made the Adonis ideal more dangerous than when the book was first published in 2002? Because you have to remember, in 2002, the male access to the ideal body was the cinema screen, the men's health cover models, the other men in the gym, and being a gym goer since the mid-90s, I have seen a wholesale change on how men look and what they consider to be a good base. I spent a few months being a PT in Pure Gym here in Milton Keynes, and there was questions of me: do I even lift? I mean, I don't know. Do I look like it? I'm old enough not care anymore. So, share your thoughts. Has the rise of social media made the Adonis Complex for men better or worse? Thank you for listening.